June 6th, 2022. It's 8:30 a.m. I'll get everybody to please stand and join me with the pledge. To the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Termination of voting members. Ms. Anderson's out. Mr. Clay's absent. Ron Priestman's here. Mr. Bradley. Mr. Moldenhauer.
Present.
Mr. Nelson.
Present.
Ms. Trent.
Here.
Mr. Snyder is also missing today. Hopefully they will bless us with their presence in a little. Agenda item number 2, we have two additions to the agenda. Presented by Mr. Hayford at 2A for Treasure Island State Grant WG 018 and 2B invoice from Polk Consulting Engineers on Connor Gable. Any board member wish to add or delete anything from the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to accept the additions.
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Nixon. Second, Mr. Moldenhauer. I got to get in the habit of Mr. Moldenhauer now. Further discussion, being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Gonna start with 2A. John, Treasure Island Grant.
Thank you, sir. Board members, this is the long-awaited grant package from the state for the Treasure Island appropriation. While I would like it to be the full amount, it isn't. It's for $21,020,580, which is a very, very good start and very, very thankful. This is the standard grant that we have used multiple times before, but for your reading pleasure, everything is in there. You can look through it. It is of the opinion I have that we need to go ahead and execute on the second page, having the board chairman to execute this document after any review, discussion by board members and direction thereof. I'll be happy to entertain any thoughts or questions.
Do I have anything for John?
So we've got this 21 million, 3.5 from another grant.
We have 1 million from the federal government in the queue. Its paperwork is, and then recently in the signed budget, I think it was 3.75 million that made it through the budget process. So we have roughly 25 of 30 million.
Anything expected from the Word bill or?
Well, I got, yes, but that is years out. We were included in the House bill for the WRDA, and it's up to the Senate now, which they expect an up round vote before the end of the year from the Senate. Once that happens, then that starts the WRDA process, and we'll go back through and file the paperwork and try to get in it. But if that money's made available, I'm going to guess it's probably 2 years from now. So the other process, I'll have a little discussion later in the meeting. We were notified yesterday that the portal, wastewater grant portal, is opened up at the state level. And then there is also another opportunity for local projects. So there's 2 sources of state money that is opening up as we speak. So remind me, under the executive director items of the board, I can get into that in more detail of what direction I need from the board for those 2 grant processes. But we right now for Treasure Island, right at 25 million, 30. So it's a lot of money. There are time limits. So we would need to be able to go forward with the engineering proposals, get those in, review them, select an engineer, and get them under contract and get them started with the design work. So, that answers your question.
Yeah.
This is just approval of the application process.
This one is for the grant that's already been awarded, and it finalized it. You can look through it, there's a work plan and timeline and dollars, how it's all distributed throughout the project. So it's basically that final approval that we will accept the money and abide by their rules and regulations. Does that answer that?
Kind of semi-committing to moving ahead with the whole project then, right?
We are moving ahead, so we'll start the design element, probably 18 months under the design for the surveying and, that type of deal. Somewhere along that line, we will begin the actual bidding and moving forward. My thought process is there'll be 3 projects. It'll be along Forest Main from Treasure Island to Stony Road, and then we have a north quadrant for vacuum collection and a south. So we'll probably put an emphasis on, say, the north collection system and the fourth, and then we following that the third bid, which would be the south collection system. But it would all be designed so that as a package it's going to work. But we'll probably bid it for construction in 3 different projects.
John, when do you anticipate the RFs for engineering?
I will put them out within the next week.
Okay.
It's a pretty standard deal, put them out, and probably have them open for a month. I do not believe we'll be in time to bring it to the July meeting. So if I'm targeting, the ranking committee would have them for August. I just don't think there's enough time to get it out on the street, give them time to put together proposals, then get them back to review them, and then bring the ranking to the board, where the board could either accept the ranking or come up with their own, and we go forward from there.
At that point, that starts the timeline compliance, that we're in compliance, that we're moving forward with the project. The RFPs, or the
Once you
engineers.
sign this,
Oh, it is at that point?
Today.
once you sign it,
Yeah, we're
you're
kidding
agreeing,
today.
I ain't signed it.
you're agreeing that, the terms that are in there, the timeline, the different funding mechanisms, that will move forward with it. Just like for the Southwest Service area, Ridge Park, all of the previous ones.
Any further discussion or any other questions for John?
Just what's the timeline?
Okay, let me show you.
I mean, all you have to do is just,
There's 2 timelines to worry about. On page 3, way back in the back, let me see if I can tell you. It would be nice if they're all numbered consecutively, but attachment 3 is the grant work plan, where it talks about the individual. So one of the tasks is commitment to basin management action plan. That's a letter. We can do that. Design and permitting is 3/31/2024. That is a permit. Bidding and contractor selection, again, 3/31/24. Project management, 9/30/25. Land acquisition, 3/31/24. And then construction is through 9/30/2025. I probably have, no, we're good. It's all good. So 9/30/2025 is our projected start to finish. And if you look here, it's like on page 1. It's like 2026 that this has to be used by.
fully funded?
Ma'am?
Fully funded.
What do you mean by fully funded?
You say it has to be used by,
This $21 million has to be used by, I think it's 2026, I have to find it. I don't normally keep up with that until, as I'm doing the work plan, because the work plan was about a year in advance of it, so I didn't, but it's like 2026. Oh, it's on page 1, I missed it. On page 1, up right, March 30, 2026. Is when all the money, this money, the 21 million, has to be utilized.
But our projected timeline to finish the project is 9/30/25.
Yes, sir. 6 months in advance.
Anything else from John? Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve and execute the document.
So said.
By Mr. Nelson,
Second.
by Ms. Trent. Further discussion? Good.
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
One last item, though, we will be doing the RFP. Is there a board member that would like to either be directed to do it, asked to do it, applied to do it, to be on that selection committee of the final, the committee's ranking of the RFPs this evening?
Mr. Clay's not here today, so it'd be fair to him,
Yes,
wouldn't
it
it?
would be.
It would be if he were gonna be in town.
I generally get picked, but I'll be glad to yield it to somebody else.
I nominate Mr. Priest.
You did you? I'll accept if.
You will
nobody else-
volunteer.
Okay,
You-
fair enough.
Voluntold.
All right, fair enough, that's all I need. Thank you.
Sir, moving on to agenda item 2B, invoice from Holtz Consulting Engineer on the Connor Gable Water Main Extension. Mr. Hafer.
And this is something that, as has happened with the Treasure Island, comes in after the board packages get sent out. This is an invoice from Holt Consulting Engineers. They are the engineer design for Connor's Gable Water Main Extension. Their request was for $4,175.50. I can tell you that the project has essentially been completed. It's been pressure tested, disinfected, and accepted by DEP, so we should be putting it into service pretty quick. So I'd easily recommend approval of this expense of $4,175.50 to Holt Construction, Consulting Engineers.
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Ms. Trent.
Second.
Second, Mr. Moldenhauer. Discussion? John, did we get any other residents show interest?
Yes, I believe there's been at least one additional, but I know there's one, I just don't know if there's any others. But we've had, I know of 2 people that are very near, just past the end, and they both say they wanted it, but, the main stopped where it did, so we'd have to extend it further, to include those folks. So there's interest in the neighborhood, we just have to, do the projects and get them.
That'd be important to get that neighborhood hooked up prior to wastewater coming through your neighborhood, if you know where it's going for that. All right, any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 3, meeting minutes from the May 19th Board of Director meeting. I'll let you guys discuss that. Discussion?
Motion to accept minutes?
Motion to accept by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Moldenhauer. Discussion? Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, boy, the fun stuff. All right. I think we're going to lunch today.
All of it.
Ms. Afron, Ms. Van Castle, come up here, please. Just call you Paige.
There you go.
On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Okeechobee Utility District, we want to thank you for your years of service. And hopefully we can count on you for 5 or 10 to 20 to 30 more. And it's the support staff and the people in the office that make our heartbeat here. We are very appreciative of each and every one of you. And here you go. And Paige, now it's a photo op. And we'll smile for Mr. Taylor. All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, you didn't have to go to work.
I thought.
You thought it. Nice break. second. I'm moving to agenda item number 5, the consent agenda. Any board member wish to have any item pulled? We'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Ms. Trent. Discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Going to, not bad. Agenda item number 17, the preliminary budget.
Is that- Getting set up here, high tech.
We're talking about getting motorcycle helmets that you can see thing in the visor, but we're still using cords. Come on.
Give me one moment.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, we're gonna have here, this agenda item number 17, preliminary FY '23 budget. As a reminder, last month, we gave each board member a, package, a notebook for the, draft of the FY '23 budget for your, insomnia or whatever else you'd like to use it for. Today is our discussion where we actually will present the budget to you, hopefully adopt it as a preliminary budget, and then we'll spend the summer months entertaining either one-on-one telephone calls with each board member, try to explain it further in detail, answer the questions as we work towards September, where we will adopt the final budget for the coming year. So the morning is the actual board presentation for this preliminary budget. I should note that this is not George here with us. This is the finance director for the OUA. He's been here several months at the board meetings. George has gone on to bigger and better things, and Lauriston is here to carry on the finance director flag. So between the two of us, certainly we are pretty deep into this budget, and we'll do a presentation this morning. The presentation will follow what we have done in the past, where we will put the highlights of the ideas and the alternatives that we've selected to do the budget. Be happy to talk about them, and then we can go through whatever detail of the budgets for your review. So with that, let me let Mr. Lawrence take over. He can go through these items that we have here in your board package.
Okay. Am I okay here? You want me to?
Fine, right?
All right, good morning, everyone. All right, if we look at the screen or on the sheet that you just received, I think the slide how I'd like to start is to give a broad overview of the budget as we are presenting, which is FY '23, and make a comparison with last year's budget and the last audited financial statement. So just in summary terms, if you look at the sheet here before we go into the details, you will see that the budget movement between the current proposed budget and the last approved budget, revenue moves by 5%. There is an increase of 5%, and which flows through the budget. It mainly has to do with things like rate adjustments and those other adjustments that came through. On the expense side, I would say expense is flat, 99.3 between both FY23 and 22. So while there are some movements between expenses, increase, decrease, the overall picture is that the expense has been proposed for FY23 is exactly in line with what was proposed in terms of for FY22. Now, the final broad picture that I will look at is normally a budget, when being presented, probably should go down a little bit. One of the first things I think most individuals look at in a budget, are you starting a budget from a point of deficit or a point of surplus? Now, I know we're not into profit making as a profit generating center, but we want to make sure that what we do, we are actually at least covering our expenses. And if we look at results for the proposed results for FY23, we're just about doing that. I would say it's a break even. 197,000 is a break even. Pretty much similar to FY22, where there was a break even. Now, I know if you look to the left, you see this huge figure, 2.5 million. You might be wondering, what is that? What it really is, from the audited financial statement, when the actual results are presented, there are some expense that we were very conservative and make some allowances. And those allowances were cushioned just in case. And of course, being prudent, we didn't actually expect some of these. So there are some savings on the expense side. So if you look on FY21, which is the audited financial, you will note that the operating expense was 6 million, 5.9 million, where we had, you probably had a budget of about 7.5 to 8 in that year. So that's really what happened. And so from an overview, this is really the results as we are proposing to the board, and asking the board to give their approval. Any questions before we move on? So if there's none, if we should go to agenda item number 17, where we have the preliminary budgets being explained in revenue in a little bit more details. The income, as we saw on the earlier spreadsheet on the screen, is a total of 11.7 or 0.8 million, which we earlier said is a 5% adjustment or improvement over the previous one. Included in that is 2 years that I think we need to have consideration between now and September, as John just said. The 2 years, the first one is a rate adjustment. If you look in your board package, I made a summary of what the consultant had proposed earlier this year. And he proposed a 2% of scenario number 1, which was 2% over 5 years. Board decided in FY22, the first year, was to go along with 3%, being cautious because of, I think, the inflation at that time, right? It is therefore the board's prerogative. Likewise, in FY '23, if the board would like to consider one of these scenarios for approval in September, or if the board will go along with the consultant recommendation. For this preliminary budget, we included the 2% that the consultant recommended. So the revenue that you have here of 11.76 million includes a 2% adjustment in rates. And of course, that is just a preliminary. We will await your guidance as to the final. Right? So that is one I will like to have your feedback on. And I don't know if there's any question or anything about the consultant that you want to call here. But that's where we are proposed.
So the proposed is a 2% rate increase.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mr. Hamilton, Murray Hamilton came in last year, I think, and did the presentation. And I think we were, because we hadn't done any rate increases in many years, we were like 5 or 6% behind that we need to go, but we didn't want to do the stickers and do that. So that would, if I remember last year, we decided 3% and then 2%, 2%, 2%. If I'm correct, and that, isn't that what the, Mr. Hamilton just,
Projected to be 5 or 6%
5 or 6%,
behind
right?
in the after 5 years.
Correct, yes.
Not that we were,
5
not
years?
that we're behind the 8 ball already.
That's what I wanted to make sure of, so.
But we weren't planning on this inflation that we're seeing right now.
Yeah,
so
that would be
there's-
my question to you, is 2%
we're
adequate
discussing as a board
with
whether
the
2 is going to be sufficient.
projected inflation?
Well, the consultant, in his model that he used, he applied an inflation of 4.2% per year moving forward annually. I had a discussion with Mr. Hamilton on the model that he used. And his conclusion is that this time he thinks that the model is still applicable and it is okay. And he will not recommend any adjustment to the model at this time. So from my interaction with him, he seems like a very solid person. I have not met him, but he seems very solid, and I take his recommendation, and that's why I applied the same model here.
As a board, I think we do too.
Yeah.
He's been working with us for quite a few years.
In fact, we got a step last year by going 3, kind of gives us some coverage for a short-term high inflation rate, probably.
That's reassuring if you and Mr. Hamilton agree that
Yeah.
projection is good, the model is good. I would work with that.
If I can, certainly, to try to address the issue of what's going on in the economy right now, whether you believe the annual interest rate is going to end up at 6% or 8% or higher, presently, what we're looking at is that this 2% will be sufficient to meet, the revenue rated will meet the expense of the year. What I would remind you is that at least one year that I can think of, we did a mid-year adjustment. So even if we're on a fence as to whether this is acceptable or not, I would at least offer that to the board, that if, as the rest of this summer progresses and we get into next year, if some of our projections are way off the mark, we could do a mid-year adjustment. The second thing, this is just a preliminary budget, so we do have July and August and the beginning of September to see what happens nationally as to whether or not we're still comfortable with the 2%. adjust it as we need to throughout the rest of the summer. And then if we need to make it 2.5 or 3, so be it. So long as we make that decision before the September board meeting, and we can adjust it to bring it back. So I don't know if that helps, peace of mind, comfort, but yes, we do have that option of July and August, see where the national economy is going. Even if we keep it, we do have that ability to do, say, a mid-year correction. So, sorry, I don't know if that
No,
helps.
no, that was very helpful.
Yeah, yes, very much so.
All right, so continuing the second point that I just want us to highlight or to remember, to bear in mind at this time is the connection rate fee, the connection fee that we normally charge. There is, historically, we have always applied a 75% discount, but that is not, that doesn't have to be the case. Actually, I think that 75% discount on the connection fee actually sunsets on September 30th of this year. Now, if we decide to do nothing, it will revert to a no discount situation, right? So I think between now and September, the two areas that we can bear in mind is one, the overall rate adjustments, and two is the discount the board would like to approve for the connection fees. Budgeted in those connections, we budget a total of 25, water and sewer. I know as at August, as at May, we were doing a little better than the budgeted figures that we had in terms of 25 water and 12 sewers. So in summary, is we will look forward to your feedback by September regarding the discount rate to be applied.
If I could, I'd like to at least point out one important issue. These are based upon 25 water connections and 12 sewer connections. And it would be remiss if I wouldn't point this out, but that choice to reduce it by 75% results in a $100,000 difference in the fees we charge. And not necessarily next year's so much, but the year following, we could have hundreds of new connections. So I'll just leave it at that, and folks can connect the dots as far as we do not expect just 25 water and 12 sewer connections, not 23, but 24. So there can be a financial cost to keeping it at 75.
You said the set is September 30th. How long, is annual?
We do
Okay.
a 1-year resolution, and it's good for the year, and if no action is taken, the actual connection fees revert back to what's in the rates.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah, thanks.
throw that out.
If we're okay with the revenue, we could make a brief look at the expenses on the expense side. As you said, year over year, which is FY '23 versus FY '22 budget, there is a flat movement in terms of the total. We have a slight decrease, but I would say it remains flat from 3,109,000 previously to 3.2. What makes up those, the main item is that labor cost accounts for 48% of our total OM costs, and we propose a $1 increase in the basic rate across the board, right? I think that is also one of the cushions that we, I may not use the word cushion. If we look at the inflation adjustment in terms of what's happening in the economy, when we dig to our expenses, 48% of those expenses are not incurring what is happening in the economy because there is just a proposal of $1 increase, right? Which is far less than 10%, of course, of the basic rates. That's what I'm saying. I saw that look.
I was, no, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, in the economy, you have 8% inflation.
Right.
Are we experiencing 8% or more on our internal expenses,
Okay.
similar to the economy?
Right.
And here I'm saying no, because 48% of our costs internally are salary related,
And not fuel gas.
and that is not experiencing an 8 or 10 or 20, 30% increase. So earlier when the figures, I think I'm also just trying to raise that, yes, inflation is a consideration for us because things like chemicals that we use at the plants, there have been 30% increases there, but as a dollar value or as a percentage of our total cost, it is not as heavily weighted as the labor impact. So overall, our adjustment, I think our dollar value adjustment that we had on our expenses is like a net of $200 and something, right? And that is because it's heavily weighted, 48% of the weighting is where labor is concerned. And if you look at what is the dollar value increase in the proposed rate, it adequately compensates that increase on our costs. So my comfort in what we are presenting here is $1 value increase on our internal expenses are adequately matched by, are equally matched by the dollar value increase in the rate.
And that also covers the increase that we have to do in wages as well.
Increase in wages as well is included in there.
Okay.
And sorry.
But we're still
Go
going
ahead.
to have to do it going forward.
Yeah, we still have to, because as we know, going forward, there is no, the state of Florida has basically mandated a movement in the minimum wage over, I think, 6 years, coming to September 2026. We should have a $15 per hour. So we still will have to have an ongoing rate adjustment in the wages as we go forward. And of course, we will account for those as we go. That what is our lowest scale weight right now. And I think that right now what I saw is that we are ahead of where the state says come September 30th, 2022, which just gone, the minimum wage should be $11 per hour, with a $1 increase each year. And we are presently, the lowest wage I saw was like $14.40. So I think we are compliant, but we will definitely have to continue moving to make sure we don't lapse behind, right? So from the expenses side, inflation, I think that we need to keep an eye on it, but I think our internal costs are, we just need to maintain an eye on how the inflation is taking place inside. There's a 1.5 staff bonus, and then we have things like health insurance, and noted this year from the actual valuation, we normally, there's a 6 to 6.5% contribution that we normally do on the pension fund, but following the actual valuation, we received March 22 this year, March 15th, I think, this year, 2022. The recommendation is that from the employer perspective, proposing that we don't make any contribution towards the pension. So initially we had put in, but upon receiving that report, took it back out. Right? So we are required to
So
make
our pension is healthy enough that we don't need to
We'll pay.
contribute this year.
for this year only.
Yeah, well, let me throw some water on it.
Yeah.
Um,
That was as of last week.
I shall throw some water on that. GRS, the folks at the actuarial board for the pension, this contribution this year is based upon last year's activity. So please do not assume zero for this year will be zero for next year. So they're off by 1 year. So we can't look at what's happening now in the market and say, well, that's great. It's going down this much, we still only get zero. They're off by a year. So next year it'll be a zero, but there'll be several zeros in it with some numbers.
And Lars, what was the 1.5 bonus that you mentioned?
That's the one that we have historically put down.
Okay,
Not the COLA.
There is no COLA and no merit proposed for next year.
that's what I'm asking.
You can almost suggest the dollars a COLA, but it's only being given not based on what we're seeing interest rates right now, but try to be ahead of the curve on the mandated $15 an hour. So we want to make sure that everybody is above that and that hopefully we get better applicants.
But of course, if there is any recommendation along that line, we will gladly make the adjustment if there's any.
Should we think about making a pension contribution this year, even though?
You can. I would take the good, what got it, and then go from there.
I just thinking buy low, sell high.
We spoke about the various costs already, so I think that basically give us a broad overview of the expenses. And I don't know if something on the income or expenditure side that any clarification is required or needed, but I'll gladly be able to give whatever clarification, whether now or in a future period, right? And then the last two things is, one is the capital expenditure. We gave a summary of the proposed capital expenditure, both from the minor projects and major projects. The minor projects are required to maintain the plants and the various operations, and the major projects are those larger projects which are generally funded through grants or that we have there to be funded via loan. The first one, which is a document application, loan application further on, looks at an advanced metering infrastructure. That we will deal with in another area of this meeting, but there is a proposed loan there. And then I think last meeting there was a discussion as to the Pine Ridge. So where we will end with the Pine Ridge wastewater system, if the other modification or adjustment will carry those costs down, or if it will remain somewhere high up in there. How do we fund that? Do we fund from internal, or if we have to look external? What I will only say as a comfort for here is that the revenue that we are generating using the same calculation utilized by the rate consultant, in his rate adjustment, he had included the AMI repayment. So the AMI repayment, which we are proposing to have here later on, that repayment with coverage is already included in our computations, and see that we are able to meet the AMI loan repayment, should that be approved. Also, if there's a difference on the Pine Ridge that we need to seek external assistance to fill that gap, we are able to cover those. So those are the two that I made an examiner to look at to make sure as a cushion, should the board consider, ask me, then I've actually made a ones out for those 2 years, you know. And then finally, I think we all want to make sure that our debt coverage are maintained within the resolution or what we have been mandated to. And yes, we are presently more than satisfying the resolution requirement. So I think broadly speaking, as we looked at the budget, it's what I would say is a conservative budget, not an aggressive budget. Conservatively looked at a 5% increase in revenue. Of course, in terms of the net position, we look at a break-even, so a conservative budget covering all areas that are pertinent to the financial operations. And of course, all of these, if we await your guidance, because we know that we are not the seat of all knowledge, right? So wherever assistance and guidance can be given, we will gladly give those guidance. So this is just a summary presentation on the budget. Of course, we have another 2 months as you look over the packages, and if there's any questions, any line items that you need clarification, I'm at everybody knows, so I'm here, and if you want me to come for lunch and to explain, I'll come lunch and explain.
Do they have a vote? No, you gave me the card.
The card. It's on John.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamilton. That was very informative and educational. Thank you, and I'm very appreciative of your comfort level of where we are, and I hope that continues for the next 2 months.
So I'll just end with, you have the FY '23 budget. It's essentially laid out the same way last year. You have your different sections, A and B, both revenue, expenses. You get into C, it's detailed expenses. I mean, down to some pretty exact detail where we expect that to occur in different departments of admin, meter reading, water, wastewater, and maintenance. So if you want to know how much we're going to anticipate spend $5 a gallon or $7.50 a gallon, you know, that line item is in there. FPNL, pumps, you know, it's all there. So please look through that in detail. Backing that up, there's projects, the fire hydrant fund, the 90-day fund, the emergency fund. There's just lots in there to see. And while I'm on the subject, it may be important to discuss this year once again, the 90-day fund, the operating fund that we have resolution, and that will be brought to you hopefully next month with revisions to that resolution, which is my policy, our policy that you've established on how we operate this company. It has everything in it. In there is that operating fund that's currently set at 90 days. There's been discussion in the past as to whether we need to look at that again, because that's money set aside that we can't use, and is a 60-day fund more appropriate. Mind you, we always have the emergency fund for unexplained events, and that's set at 30 days. So right now, we have 120 days set aside in a fund that hopefully we never use, but it would be nice to use. So we want to consider moving that from 90 to 60, and that'll be next month when we have that discussion. But the agenda's out as far as the package. Please call us up. We're happy to talk one-on-one, or by telephone or in person, as we move forward through the summer months. That's my wrap up.
Thank you.
There,
Sir?
I was just gonna say, is there any comments or what we presented, we explained?
For taking you to lunch, is bologna and white bread good enough? We bring some lunch meat over, 'cause
I was thinking water and crackers myself, but
okay.
saltine.
Don't be sensitive. I don't come over with some hospital one day. We sit down. Now, thank you very much. Very informative. Nothing else from the board on proposed OUA employee handbook.
Mr. Chairman and members, this is, we have a couple long-awaited manuals that we've been working on through time. The employee manual is one of them, purchasing manual, hopefully will be a draft, will be out in the coming weeks, to start review. But the employee manual is here for your review, and it's gone through, two assistant finance directors. Janet had put much of the work together with the assistance of ADP, our they actually our human resources consultant. Internal staff review. Here is the most current manual. At the time of this delivery in the board package, there were a couple questions talking about left remaining about when disciplinary action is given to employees. So let's say it's a day off without pay. They have been trying to utilize vacation time to make up the different pay. So handed out to you this morning, yesterday, we got a response back from HR. The red writing is what they had proposed to change it to. So this red writing and these elements are the only difference in the handbook. So we would like to know if through the board's review of this handbook, whether there would be any corrections we need to make, or after review and discussion, whether or not the OUA board would accept this manual as proposed with these few changes here in this additional sheet, whether that could be considered an approved manual. I'll open it up for if there's any specific questions about the manual or the attachment.
I had a question on section 1-7,
Page
Shoot.
9. It's okay. What that seven's all on page 8.
Talking
You
about
ready,
OUA
departments?
departments.
I thought I had the page listed, but I guess I didn't. Three listed, oh, yeah. On executive staff, whether we should add an assistant executive director.
That's the intent, so yes, we could.
Just what I was thinking, and that's the intent to add that position. You might want to stick that in there. And the other thing I had, you've already fixed on page 52, the 15 and 16.
Yes.
You good with that? Cool. Great, the recommendations.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Motion by Mr. Trent,
Second.
second by Mr. Nelson.
What was the motion?
Approve
To
to
appro-
approve as
Approved as
presented.
presented, with the changes,
With the changes.
yes.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to Buckhead Ridge, Orange Loop Engineering Proposal, agenda item 19.
Chairman, board members, this is, you have been, you have seen this in the past. We do have, the engineer has presented to us the permit application. They are finishing up the drawings. We are at a point that's where I need direction as far as the expenses to be incurred for construction. What I'm suggesting is, in the past, most of our construction projects what would be the cost to their property. So, and this is specifically for construction-related activities. We, other than CDG monies that were used for Whispering Pines that technically paid for the connection fees, the residents have always had to pay the standard connection fees for whatever service they're getting, whether it's water or wastewater. The lot owners would have paid those fees. So my question to the board this morning, or the request for direction, if you will, is to tell these 15 lot owners to what extent would they be expected to pay their share of the construction costs. So whether the OUA is going to pay for none of the construction, or a percentage of the construction, or all of the construction costs. What I will tell you is that the questions I've received from some of them is a septic tank is one price, $8,000 to $10,000. Why would I pay for connection cost to an OUA system that might be $15,000 or $20,000 at the end of the day? And that's where we're at with it. So I guess I kind of need direction as to what is the board thinking specifically towards construction costs.
You have a partial funding cost to OUA of $70,276. That's not total construction cost, is it? That's still splitting with the or the homeowners?
I'm trying to see where that.
Partial funding.
Yes, I mean, the OUA, if you look at this construction cost, the total is $253. But presently, the OUA has taken on upon itself the engineering design at $18,600 and the construction observation at $13,452, and then there's the contingency light item.
Well, I guess what I'm looking at is what would be the OUA's burden if we put in the infrastructure and the residents were just responsible for the capital connection?
Right now, the estimate's $253,672.
So that would be our,
Yes, sir.
That's construction costs.
And that's the estimate.
What's the proposed return if you did that?
Well, the proposed return is, right now, there's at least 4 residents of the lots that are ready to build or bring in manufactured mobile homes, but there would be a total of 15 new customers.
But there's not mandatory hookup.
I don't know what Glades County, I'm unaware. What I can tell you is the health departments are generally the same. So if our service is available, they will not issue a septic tank permit.
Yeah, with new construction, it's
Okay,
not a
that's
problem.
what I'm asking, because even though there's 15, it doesn't mean that all 15 are, okay.
It doesn't mean all 15 will be developed
That's
right
right.
away either.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
It's a maximum.
Mhm.
I have had conversations with 3 lot owners.
Mhm.
They're ready to connect right now. And one of those has another family member that is moving in, so that's where I got the 4 from. I think there is another 3 or 4 that are waiting on answers here before they pull the trigger and either buy a pre-manufactured home or do a site build.
So going back to Tom's question. Yeah, the return.
Well, what I'll tell you is the return, as far as fees, is unlimited, because once they're connected, they're our customers. So I don't know how to answer that, because if you remember, our monthly bill is based upon a base charge and a volumetric charge. Volumetric charge is supposed to be a pass-through. We charge them what it costs us to clean the water. And on the base charge, it's to meet our costs, because we're, trying to get to that perfect sweet spot where there's no profit. So the base charge will cover things. So there is, if you look at a rate of return as, well, we're gonna make profit, when are we gonna pay for this project? I don't know how to answer that.
So what have we customarily done?
most all, if not all, the water projects, it's been on OUA's dime. There was a decision a long time ago made that we would pay it if it is a project that's going to help multiple people. Now, if a water line extension was going to serve one person, generally they paid it. If a developer came in and said, I'm putting in 100 homes, they paid it. On the wastewater side, the biggest wastewater projects have all been primarily grant funded, with OUA capital making up the difference. Individual lot owners only pay the connection charge, no construction cost.
And you're saying multiple,
Picture Taylor Creek Isles, couple hundred homes,
right,
multiple.
so this is not multiple,
Southwest Service Area is
Right.
gonna be 500 homes.
right.
The first vacuum station, Owsley Estates, was a lot of areas, probably 200 or 300 homes. So those are the bigger projects. Those were all, again, grant funded through the state or OUA funded.
This project is somewhat different the way I view it. The other projects we've been doing in wastewater, not that it has any different merit, you know, what a policy is a policy. But the ones in Okeechobee that are served by the regional sewer plant, we have the capacity and it goes to pay. These aren't tied into that plant. They're on a standalone thing, so it's an animal to itself sitting out here. That being said, I have met with the Glades County Administrator and asked if they'd be interested in cost sharing, anything to help these type of things, because we possibly have another 1,200 homes projected out there. He said they don't have anything in place, but they would be glad to team up with OUA. He projects his commissioners would be glad to go with OUA to Tallahassee and try to find some of this funding for sewer septic. Over. So maybe down the road we'll have an avenue, but right now, this doesn't apply to keep the load off of the loans we have for the regional plant.
No, but it does go into an OUA treatment plant, that being Lakeview Estates.
Correct.
It's a small package treatment plant we got there.
We're not trying to pay the debt off there if we are to.
Well, I would suggest to you the annual debt service comes to the OUA
Okay.
through the base rate.
Okay.
And so it gets commingled with all the rest of the
No
wastewater.
matter which plant. the
Okay, I didn't
sewer's
realize
going
that. I
to.
thought that stood on its own when we were down there. Okay.
What is staff's recommendation?
Plant the flag and they will come.
The recommendation is, it's hard to say septic to sewer is good for this area, but not that area. So my response is, we're all one, it all goes to the lake. I think anywhere we can eliminate the potential for water quality impacts, that we should strongly consider. I know that's not a correct yes or no, but I'm just saying, the point, from our standpoint, I would suggest that yes is the answer, because we are on this element of septic to sewer. You could suggest that if anybody asks, we don't always get assistance to do projects, we do some on our own. This might be an example of that, so I would like to say that I would think that it would be fully funded by the OUA.
Okay.
There's more money in Tallahassee available. The governor yesterday gave out, what was 75,000? He gave out 2 additional grants on septic to sewer, 2 other counties. I think what we need to do is to go forward. I think what we need to do is, well, some of us have had contact with Connie, okay, to go after more monies, both at the state and federal, being that the governor made mention that there is a tremendous surplus and his willingness to clean up the waters. I think we have a very good chance of getting not only money for that, but getting money to close the gap on the spread of the previous, taking into consideration that the economy, unfortunately, was not taken into consideration when the grants were originally issued.
Per our discussion yesterday, if I understood you correctly, if we were able to team up with Lake County or whatever and get some funding for this, because we've already made this decision, we couldn't go to pay this debt off. This is what it is.
It's not necessarily the decision, it's that you can't do the work before you get the approval, so.
And right now, the people are sitting there waiting for us.
There is a home out there that's ready to be connected, they're ready to pull the trigger one way or the other, septic or OUA.
And we'd hate for them to put a septic tank in for $20,000 and come back in 18 months and have to tie in at $3,000.
Or 10,000, I mean,
Exactly.
it's,
That'd be terrible.
So, it's good to go for grant monies or assistance, but it would be on lots of other projects that we have in the works. This is pretty much yes or no, do we go forward with, this project?
So the only return we have on this, as Tom was, is through the base fee and the consumption.
Well, if you're talking financial, it is the 15 new customers. If you're talking about the return, well, if you want to talk about water quality,
Environmental.
you know, it's there. So there's lots of ways to look at it. It just comes down to the 253,000 things we need to look at. Get the funding, make the funding available, and move forward with this project.
Now, the important question, do we have the money in the budget for 22 to do this project?
I'm gonna say there is not a specific line item for this, but if you remember, there was some money that we set aside last month, into capital projects from the unfunded or unallocated resources from last year. So if you're asking me, is there money available? There is money available, but it takes away from this future project to do this current project.
Just some insight on that, that was developed probably more 10 years ago.
Oh, at least.
Chubby Place is what it was called, and they subdivided it and put all the water in, the meter boxes are there, so the water's readily available, and they haven't nobody even bought a whole bill up until now. That's right, Billy.
Well, it'd be safe to say that you wouldn't make that recommendation unless there was money available. Unless it
Or
could be
customers,
covered.
or customers. We wouldn't be talking about this over the last 10 years where nobody was interested, nobody contacted us. Okay, but because of late last year, they started knocking on the door and making phone calls. So the answer to your question, yes, and yes, because there are people now asking.
Is the newly revamped plant functioning as designed?
It is functioning, and there are still some minor corrections needed, some probes that weren't working. The manufacturer sent the metal is wrong in the cover. They sent regular steel instead of stainless steel, so they have to manufacture a new cover. There's little things like that. The 7 new customers on the north end are connected, so, I mean, it's working.
Producing the wastewater quality that they expect?
But, well, I don't know that I'd go that far, because it's the plant startup, so you have to seed the plant and grow the biological film
Right.
to make it work, and I don't know if they're at that level.
Oh, okay. You just hate to put 50 connections on it and find out we have to.
Well, what we would end up putting is at least 4 anticipated new connections over the next 6 months or so. I don't know about the rest of them, when they would plan and function.
How many connections are on that plant now?
I do not know that answer. I'm going to guess it's in the order of 40. The flows that we're measuring are less than 50% of the design capacity of the plant. It's pretty low. The neighborhood, I guess, just, not a lot of people.
Question, John, if we approve this today to move forward, what's the timeline on construction completion for the force main?
For the force main?
For the
Oh, the collection
collection system.
Okay, there we go. I would guess it would go in within 6 months.
6 months, okay.
It's not very long, it's 500 feet, well, somewhere around 500 feet of piping.
Right.
So I say 640, so somewhere around 600 feet of pipe. It'll go very quickly.
You would articulate that to the guy that's ready to hook in now, that in potentially 6 months, we could have him online.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I've heard already here. What are your thoughts, Harry? That's your hood.
I would agree with John's recommendation to move forward at our expense.
Is that in the form of a motion, sir?
Certainly.
Okay, motion by Mr. Moldenauer.
Second.
Second by Ms. Nelson. Any further discussion?
As a confirmation, that was 100% payment by OUA from your bank.
The 253,672
Estimated cost.
estimated cost, yes.
That is a cost estimate, so
Okay.
once we get bids, we'll know for sure.
Correct.
But the bids will come back to you and you can still say,
Right.
yeah.
Noted. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Carries unanimously.
That was Harry 1 and Tabitha 2.
Yeah. They're fighting over the second.
Steve and I were on the same.
They were arm
Yeah.
wrestling.
Steve was the third motion.
Fourth.
It was a decision vote. Very good. Wow. He's sitting on a cat. Yes. Or possible. Agenda item number 20, Pine Ridge Park demolition. John?
Mr. Chairman, board members, we have had a very successful operation to demolish the old Kings Bay wastewater treatment plant.
No.
Pine Ridge.
Pine
Didn't
Ridge.
say that, I'm sorry. Kings Bay is in the future. Pine Ridge wastewater treatment plant that was given to us through the court system many years ago. We converted that treatment plant, built a pump station, and are currently pumping the waste to our regional facility on Cemetery Road. So when we got the station back, it was an opportune area for the future vacuum sewer system that will go in to serve the rest of the Ridge Park area. So we entertained the thought of hiring a contractor to do the demolition of the plant and push the pond in and clean up that area. I can tell you that it's been completed on time, within budget, and you'll see in your board package a change order number, which does not adjust any construction time and only deletes the contingency line item to the tune of $20,000. So change order number 1, which is up for review and consideration this morning, is to lower the overall contracted price to $82,164. Should that be approved, which I would certainly recommend that it is approved, then you will see a final pay request for this project to be paid to B&B Site Development in the amount of $82,164.
What's the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Trent.
The motion is to accept change order number 1.
To accept change order number 1.
Second.
Second by Mr. Nelson. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Second part,
I move we approve final payment.
approved. Motion by Mr. Moldenauer to approve the final payment of $82,164. Second by Ms. Trent. Discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I went out there, he did a nice job.
That was great.
Very good job. Okay, agenda item number 21, the USDA form amended letter of conditions. John?
Mr. Chairman and board members, this is for informational purposes. The USDA is doing the loan grant application for Project 2 of the Southwest Service Area. We needed to add some time to meet the letter of conditions that had already been previously approved. There's been a delay in getting some of the work accomplished. That's what this letter is amending it, giving us to September of 2022 to complete those items on the letter of conditions. So it was under a time frame. If you read the letter, they gave us 5 business days to accept. Since it didn't change any of the actual application process, dollars, or anything like that, we like to go ahead and send this letter in requesting this time, and it's just presented to the board as FYI, keeping in the loop of what's going on in this project. But I'll entertain any questions, comments.
So we're good with what we think this timeline is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's why, okay.
There was only 1 or 2 items that had to change in that timeline, but to get it with the USDA approval, but they've reviewed it, they've accepted it. It was just a formality to sign the letter.
Further questions for John?
No.
Thank you, John. Agenda item number 22, the SRF loan approval.
So the item 22 is for an SRF loan approval for the cost for the AMI system. You can see in there, again, this goes along with the idea that this is just a loan application. It is not loan documents. We will submit the loan application, they will prepare the loan documents, and during that time, we will also put it out to bid to where we're not working with estimates, we'll be working with solid bid numbers, which will all be brought back to the board for review, discussion, and/or either acceptance or we move on. Yes, the prices change continually on products, including these products, so you'll see that the overall expected construction cost is higher than what we were looking at in October, November of last year. We won't know any firm numbers until we actually put it out for public bid. But the net effect of the project doesn't change. There are benefits to the OUA, such as instant reads for the sale, transfer of property out front. If there's high flows, we can notify owners, go shut something off. If it's supposed to be zero flow and there's flow, we get alerts. From the customer standpoint, they can go in and look at their own water usage. When they get a bill, they can go back and say, yep, that's when my uncle and kids were visiting, or whatever the case may be. They can also be alerted to high reads or usage. So if they're back in Kentucky and they get a high use, they can see it too. So there are lots of benefits to both the end user, customers, as well as the OUA. But again, this is just for a loan application. You are not committing to a loan. I would like to suggest that we continue this process, authorize the execution of these application documents, and we move forward to getting the actual loan documents and bids back at a later date.
And it costs nothing to do the application.
Other than what's already, the preparation, there was preparation to get to this point, but actually, there is no application fee.
Okay, it's the board's wish. Motion to proceed with the application.
Yes,
Motion
sir.
to proceed by Mr. Nelson. Second, Ms. Trent. Further discussion, concerns?
No other concerns from Tom, correct?
No, this is just up to apply.
Okay, that's what I just wanted.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So, I'm just clarifying too, in that to proceed, that would be the authorization.
Correct.
Yes.
I'll make sure that was in there.
Agenda item number 23, SE2 parcel purchase.
Okay, now we're on to the good stuff. So,
Let's buy some.
what, in your board package, I can tell you again, typical of other things, there's been a change. So let me get everybody up to speed. limit of 80,000. I gave them the 72.5, there was no response, time waited. I called them back and they said, well, that just wasn't gonna work. So I said, well, what about 75? Again, no response. When I reached out to them, the realtor told me that the owner has considered to pull it off the market and just deed the property to, I guess, family members, because she must be been on in years. So, again, I had the one conversation with the realtor. I said, well, if they want to do that, I mean, that's their prerogative, but understand that you have a ready, willing, and buyer at $80,000 for this project that, you know, may or may not be easier to distribute. She said, no, the word was they wanted to take it off the market. So I thought it was gone, finished, when I wrote this up. Well, as of yesterday morning, I got a phone call from the realtor and said she had gone back to the owner, had other discussions, and they said they won't take 80, but they'll take 84,000. So, I don't know why it went from 80, I don't know what the 72.5 did for them or the 75. I'm just here telling you that the 80 went by the wayside. The current offer, the counter offer is 84,000 to buy this property. Now, what's in it for the property? It is a buffer from our lift station that's there. You can see it here in this photo that we're talking about purchasing these 3 lots, which are on the west side of our station. The city has built on the east side, right up to our station, where we used to have access to it. Is the lot, are these lots beneficial? They will be when you consider it gives us access to the station should we need it. It is a benefit because the station does have lights, does have noise, does have orders. If those 3 lots were sold to somebody that wanted to build on them, we will have phone calls in the future. So the issue is we still may have phone calls because there's lots of other residents in that area, but they're not right on top of the station. So the question is, and the board agreed last month to the 80,000 number, is 84 acceptable, or do we say no and walk away?
I think you say no and walk away. It sounds like they're just trying to bleed us.
Well, same thing we did then at 72 bucks. So.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a reason that property is not worth a fortune. It's because of our lift station.
Again, it's whatever y'all do. I've dealt with this so much now, I'm good either way.
It's almost comical. So are we sure that this is going to be the final answer, the 84?
That's what the realtor said to me, that the owner, Mrs. Wells, I think, said 84 is her number. So it's really up to the board's direction. I know 80 was somewhat acceptable last time. Whether 84 is good or not, I've done what I can do with it, so it's either yes or no. And it came to your point.
What does staff say?
Yes, those lots have been vacant forever, and are they going to continue to be vacant? I don't know that.
How long's that lift station been there?
Since the dawn of time. I can tell you that where the park is now, that was the original location of the city's wastewater treatment plant. So there has always been wastewater at that point forever. When the plant went away, we built the original SE2 station, and then in about 2010 or so, we built the current station right next to it. So we've been there, I've been here 22. Jamie's been here 30 plus, it's always been there.
The point is that people are going to know what they're buying when they buy it. That to me is a moot point. Thing is do we need the property? That's what I. And what is your recommendation?
The easy answer to the first question, do we need the property? We do not have any plans that property. So from that perspective, we do not need the property. Do we need the property to provide us parking and access to the station and a buffer from anybody building on it? I would say absolutely yes. So that's my answer. We're at a point to, do we need the property? I will answer it this way. Yes, for access, noise, complaints, some odor complaints, whatever. Yes, we do need the property.
And did we mention last time about storage?
So there was a mention that if we own the property and we had to park something there, like for future storm use or whatever, then that property is available to us. Again, before the city built the park,
Right.
we basically had free reign to use all of this property east of it,
Correct.
right here.
And my other question would be, is if we had to construct any type of facility in the way of a metal building to store things, that allowable there?
I probably would let Tom answer that, but my question is, if it's governmental property, there is governmental use allowed, but I would allow Tom to answer.
Well, as a first cousin to her question, if we bought that, would we, is part of it excess that could be resold?
There is a possibility, but I would have to check what the city requirements for making it a buildable lot.
Right.
So we may have to sell 2 of the 3 lots to make it buildable.
Can I make a suggestion? That we go down to item number 24 first and review that, and maybe that will give you the answer for 23, including item number 25. They all seem to tie in to one another.
Because we're in the property buying business right now.
You'd like to see the OUA buy that property, I know, because many times you and I have talked about that.
Well, it's always been on a wish list, not a requirement, but I do see that there is some benefit for owning that parcel.
Okay, so my question will be this. Out of the other agenda items that we're looking at, if you had to prioritize those, how would you prioritize those?
I don't know what other agenda items, if you're talking about the 2 properties for
The two
sale?
properties, correct.
I'm going to tell you that the property next to us, at the price they're asking, after we got the inspection, I'm going to suggest that it's not worth the asking price, if that means. However, that's, you know, the general picture. Now, if you're talking about a personal preference picture, it's easier to buy that so I can get help in the executive assistant director to, but there's other things we can look at. We can look at this building. So again, if I was given the 2 choices, knowing what we know about that one at 125, plus the 30, 40, 50,000 that we're gonna have
Or
to put
more.
into it,
More.
okay, or more, I don't know that it's worth the 125.
Let me try to summarize, I think, and this is my concern. What's more important, hiring an assistant, the executive director, or a buffer to a sewer plant?
Or a larger building.
Correct.
That's,
You've got property and another agenda that you could take profit from that and start looking for a larger building, okay? There's no question in my mind, yes, the property has value. I see the value that it's on the water, and they're not making any waterfront property anymore, especially on the area of Taylor Creek. I feel that in X amount of years, all the homes on Taylor Creek, okay, are going to be going up in value. Somebody's gonna, there are people out there, okay,
It'll pay the price.
that will buy up all of those homes and pay the price, just like somebody spent $10.9 million buying up property on the northern section of Okeechobee County. That's my feeling. I mean, I feel that the property next door to us is out of, no question, it's not worth it. better off for us to take a trailer, get permission to put a nice-sized trailer in the parking lot, give John the temporary
Or we
space.
could put him next to the sewer plant out there on 3 levels.
No.
Well, the thing is,
That's
this,
my
this
opinion.
building could be re-engineered if had be.
Good.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was just wondering how much you really need for a buffer there.
Yeah.
If you're talking about only access, 50 feet, 60 feet, I mean,
But we
you're
can decide-
getting, I don't know how many feet that is. And you're only $4,000 apart.
The access question or the surplus question can be answered after we acquire it. But it is a possibility, but we just have to confirm that 2 lots are buildable lots the city would allow to be sold. I would think when you look at some of the other ones that have done in the past, they only built on 1 lot. So whether or not the city would still allow that, I don't know that answer. The things that bother people, the lights, the noise, the odor, is gonna extend way beyond the boundary of those 3 lots. The issue is, the closer you get, the stronger it is, and, or, you know, you have the potential, there's a higher potential. But when you look at the idea that we do not have access, readily, easily available access from the east now, which is where we have our gates, to go in and service the generator, to service the pump station. There is 1 gate on the north, but if we bought the property to the west-west, those gates or a gate could be moved so that we would have easy access from the west. Is it worth $84,000? You know, that's a big question. The appraisal came in at 65, I think, and change. So we're 19,000 off of that appraisal, which was probably a generous value. So, where we're at.
But you still feel the OUA should buy that piece of property.
I think there is some merit and benefit to that, yes, sir.
And you can pay for it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, that is a question. The answer is yes, we can pay for it. Are we shifting more money around again, reallocating?
I'd have to get
Because-
back with you on that. I know that we did, I think we had a line item in that last amendment for the purchase of this property. Whether it was 84,000, I don't know that answer.
Because we were just talking 253,000 that we're gonna have to move somewhere, and now we're gonna move $84,000 around. And-
May.
Yeah, okay.
So at the last Board of Director meeting, we approved the purchase of this property for $80,000, but starting negotiation at 72.5. If we decide not to move forward with this property now, are we gonna scrap the board's decision last month, or keep that same decision and make another offer? Because we've already approved it one time, do we disapprove it?
That would be a attorney question, but the 80,000 was not accepted, so I think
Right.
it's,
So
it's done.
it fell
It's
away.
it's gone, yes.
Thank you. I didn't want to get into some clerical problem here. All right, do we buy property or not?
I personally prefer that over this next door.
I heard John's discussion. I think it is advantageous because of access to the sewer plant. And potential, my thought, just potential subdividing and selling a couple of lots later. And, you know, we're talking about that over on Eagle Bay right now. We bought that 2 acres that we don't need to full, and down the road somewhere, we're gonna build what we need after construction and potentially sell that, so. With this, if I remember historically, this started over 200,000, went down to 125, and then came down to 80. So they've come from 2 something to 80, correct?
Or 84.
84 now.
And it's higher than the appraised value.
So is everything.
Higher than the, you know, so I go either way.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, it's all
Yes.
forward. What are your thoughts?
What are your thoughts?
I would say at this juncture to go ahead and purchase the property.
Harry?
go along with staff recommendation that he seems to want it.
I think down the road, I think, even if, let's just say it just sits for a couple of years, as I said previously, I think that property is gonna go and accelerate in value.
Okay,
Do we have a motion?
well,
I'll make the
we're still
motion.
talking. Okay, we can motion it, but I still have some discussion. Go
Okay.
ahead. Motion
I make
by-
the motion that we proceed with the purchase of the property for the asking price of $84,000.
Mr. Nelson.
I'll second.
Second, Ms. Trent. My discussion is, so the only financial responsibility we have now, other than purchase price and insurance, of course, is to maintain the property, cut the grass, and potentially put
After-
fence up
after
for
the purchase.
liability reasons.
Gonna have to.
Fence it for liability issues where somebody didn't want to fall in the canoe.
It's just same that we've got down on the lake or on any of our
So,
premises, yes.
Other than that, that would be our only financial investment in the property, is maintaining it.
There'd be some small closing costs or something from the sale of the property. It would be minimal compared to the 84.
Correct, correct.
So as long as it's not extravagant, I'm humble with it.
Well, my realtor fees are zero.
Your realtor fees,
That's
evaluation time coming up for John's realtor.
That's seller's expense, realtor.
Further discussion? Being none,
Yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Go buy some property. Now, agenda item 24.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this is a discussion about the purchase of the adjoining parcel at 110 Southwest Fifth Avenue. We've already had a little bit of a previous discussion about it, but we, in the interim, since the last board meeting, we have had the property inspected by a home inspector. The report was submitted for review. The inspection gave you exactly what you might have expected out of a 50 or 60-year-old building. Certainly there are cosmetic issues. There are no real structural issues. There are issues with the electrical system. The panel is old, needs to be upgraded, some wiring need to be repaired. There may be, if we're moving into it, better lighting. But there are issues, fascia boards that are rotting, a back door that needs some assistance, the roof that is on there, the metal roof that's on top. The inspector looked through city records trying to find any permitting that might have been done for that. They couldn't find any. You can see the report that the roofing that's on there is structurally deficient. It's not connected to the original roofing. There's issues with the building. What those issues are, we've had estimates as low as a few $1,000s to repair the electrical system. Could be 20, 30, 40,000 for the repairs, plus other, it could be pretty expensive. It's not a $5,000 when we move in and it's ready to go. So coupled with starting where the appraisal, county property appraiser has it appraised at versus previous, at least concerned or considered sale price, now under proposed price of $125,000 with the repairs. It's a very costly event. And if you remember, the primary reason for this was to create space within this building so that we could have office space available for an assistant executive director. But the trade-off is, what are the remodel costs here versus what we could just move in and acquire this building? They seem to be pretty equal. If you consider this building price now at $125 plus any remodel cost, you might be at $175 or higher for that building. The question is it really worth it? And I know I'm going to be asked this question again, so what is my belief? I don't believe it's worth $175 or $165,000. So at the sale price of $120, I would suggest to the board that that is negotiate with them and counteroffer to say, go back to $50,000 cost, that would be up to the board. But at 125, I would suggest to you, we don't.
I was surprised at the corrosion on the roof, metal roof. Apparently there was no grommets or something there.
There's no, yeah, the rubber
They'll
wears
wear
out.
after a while.
And the screws may have been galvanized, and that's the rust that you see on the aluminum roof.
Who would have put it on there? I mean,
Well, by the building inspector's comments about the lack of the stability of the trusses, you never know who did the work or what quality of the work, and if it was done with or without permitting, how did it get that far? There's just issues being raised.
and the strap, under there, the one building, the tie-down strap is not anchored. It's there, but it's not tied to the,
Maybe it's only luck that it made it through the 2004 hurricane
the
season.
rest of them may be tied down. I don't know, whether they just picked one.
That's a construction, coming from the construction field, that's a construction nightmare. And if I was to remodel it, it would start with everything except the block walls and put a new roof, everything to bring it. Who's to say we wouldn't have to anyway to bring it up to current
Code.
codes?
Right.
There are no, and no breather pipe.
There's nothing there. The electrical's a disaster, but, I'm not in favor of moving forward with it on a personal level. And, I wish them well. I hope they sell it. And they said they had another buyer standing there waiting on it. Maybe, if we walk away, they can explore other avenues. That's their decision. But I'm not, I think the cost doesn't justify the means here. That's my personal.
Do we need a motion, Tom, not to accept?
I would suggest that there is, because the offer here is contingent upon board approval.
It is.
And I think probably just to cement that, the board, there was a.
Well, it also had an inspection. It had a, right, for the inspection too.
Accepted
so-
125 pending inspection.
I
And
believe-
that's the board's decision is not to accept that.
I make the motion that we do not accept the purchase of the property at 110 Southwest Fifth Avenue,
At the 125.
at the 125.
Motion by Mr. Nelson,
I'll second.
second, Ms. Trent. Any further discussion? Good?
I'm good.
Good, everybody's good? Motion carries.
So before we leave, I'm going to have to ask this. Is there a counter offer of anything that we should tell the owner that the board would find acceptable for that property? Knowing that we're gonna have to put remodel money into it.
What, it appraised at 50 or 30 or something?
The county appraiser had it something like 30. I do not believe we actually got an appraisal. Tom, do you recall? I don't recall us ever getting a formal appraisal.
I wouldn't do a dime over appraised value.
But I think at one point, we initially offered them 75 for the building, without knowing the building inspection. So whether or not 75, 50, or whatever, is there any counteroffer?
So what were you thinking on the cost? What would it cost if you bought it?
And repair, all the repairs.
I'm guessing that you could remodel and you could easily throw a $40,000 or $50,000 number at it, and that would be.
So if you take the 125 and take off your anticipated cost, where are you? Are you still interested in buying the property? That would be the bottom line.
As is, I'm not.
The only advantage would be to expedite the hiring of an assistant, but I don't think it justifies any expense in remodeling that building at this time.
If you could buy it for 70. You understand what I'm saying?
Not knowing what I know now about the inspection, I wouldn't offer 70 personally, on a personal level.
Well, whatever number, if there is
Offer
an.
50.
Okay, you're not interested, period.
Personally, I'm not interested.
There's too many unknown factors, in my opinion. We don't have an appraisal, and we have not had a contractor go in and give us any idea of what it's gonna take to bring it up to code and the repairs. So with me not knowing that, I am not interested.
The only contractor we've had in there, of course, is a former contractor, the guy doing the inspection, and an electrical contractor.
Right.
Other than that,
Okay.
So we don't.
so the answer is pass. Okay.
Do you agree with
Correct.
that, Steve and Harry?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Correct.
you'd have to gut the whole entire building, and then you have to fix the outer wall.
25, the OUA property for sale, 2022.
We have, thank you, Mr. Chairman, we have several properties that I was directed to find out about the potential sale on. And what I would like to do is I met with a surveyor, engineer Jeff Sumner has talked about it, and met with a realtor, Brandon Tucker, to get ideas as to what we could or couldn't do with the property. I could come up with ideas, but at least they're more akin to the business of plan division and developing, and I need to get their input. So we'll start with the easy one first. This is the former Farrell property, the house. What I was looking for was to cut a portion of that property off here on the north end, which would give us a little bit more of a buffer to the pond, and sell this front part. What is not shown on here is we have a pipe going from the road. The pipe comes over here from the water treatment plant. The backwash water, the water for disposal, comes down the road, comes through this area, and discharges into the pond. So we would actually have to provide an easement to ourselves, because we own the property. We would grant ourselves an easement for that piping and then sell the property as is with the easement on it.
So the black line on this drawing is what we're cutting off?
Reserve an
This is
easement.
what we would own, the north part, and then this is what would be for sale. 3 acres or something, whatever the remaining portion, 3.5 acres. The other parcel that I was asked to look at was the parcel behind it, which is the 66 acres. And again, this, well, I see I'm off in the wrong one. So this is the 66 acres, which is part of what we originally purchased back in around 2004, so that we could build this pond to handle the backwash water coming from our treatment plant right here. So we built the pond. We've run cattle leases on this portion for a lot of years. Matt Pierce has been running it quite a bit. We at one time gave this little 1 acre piece here to the county for the state law enforcement emergency radio system, SLEERS, which we all use. They determined they couldn't use that. They wanted this parcel, so this is where we gave this parcel right now is owned by the county, and that's where the radio is. We retained ownership of this little one as well as that. In consideration of the Okatani force main, we were talking about that there may be a need for an intermediate pump station, taking the wastewater flow from Okatani, getting it to an intermediate pump station, and then pumping it up to the Southwest Service Area pump station. So I just showed tentatively this little area here within the black that we may want to retain ownership from to build a pump station on. This is subject to kind of modify once the design engineer for Okatani can tell us exactly where it needs to be, do they need it, and how many acres. But for the sake of the discussion today, I just drew in this black area, black line here to signify as a holder for the Okatani pump station.
And how much property are you suggesting?
So-
For OUA,
For the pump station?
yeah.
Ultimately, it should probably, depending upon whether it stays here or moves up to the road, it could end up being up to 2 acres. What I will tell you is, we haven't gotten this confirmed, but my feeble memory, when this property was developed for cable TV, I think they had a satellite dish out there at one time, now it's a tower. I believe there is an easement going right across this property to serve that property. They never utilized the easement. They utilized a dirt road right here to gain access to this property through time. So not only vehicles, but cables and wiring go through that. So in the sale of this property, if this easement still exists, we'll have to figure out how we get a quick claim deed for that easement back, and we grant an easement down here for both the county property, the SLEERS, as well as this cable. That's why you saw this long line here. It would be our property, but we would grant easements to the county and to Florida Cable Company to gain access to the property.
Okay, so question, reoccurring income, I heard you say the lease from Pierce.
Yes.
So are we receiving income from the cable company and?
No, they own that property.
They own that property?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Florida Cable owns this, the county owns this little one.
so the only income we have that we would be losing would be the cattle lease?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, I mean, it's,
$3,000,
yeah.
I think, a
Okay,
year.
that's,
something like
okay, just
that. It
curious.
is money,
Yeah, just
but it's not a
curious.
lot of money.
Just keep the fences up.
Yeah, I mean, it's-
So since we produced this document, there's been one suggested change in that this pond that the OUA owns and operates, if we could change the alignment of the pond to run north and south next to this county ditch, it would free up, this property would now be 400 or 500 feet wide, as opposed to 300 feet wide, that is not readily usable to the buyer. In other words, they can't put a whole lot of homes in there just because it's long and narrow. If this pond was turned this way, it would give them much more usable land that they could utilize for development. There would be some cost to us, because we'd have to bring in dirt and create a pond here. So the question that I posed is, this cost for the pond, is that pond cost transferable to a higher sale price for this property because it's more usable, so the net cost to the OUA is zero? In other words,
Go ahead, I'm
in other
sorry.
words, if the sale of this property as shown here was, and then these are all what ifs, was sold for $2 million, and this pond cost was $300,000 to relocate the pond, does the new sale of this property, because this is all now wider and more usable, can you expect that sale price to be $2.3 million, so that additional money washes out the cost of the pond? No one can tell me that.
So
No one
even in-
knows for sure if that's doable. On paper, it looks better. But does that equate to more cash? I can't answer that question.
Well, the other thing is you no longer need, if you move that piping over, you no longer are worried about an easement there, which,
What Tom is suggesting, this piping that's going through this little parcel here, if we moved it and put it over here, then we don't need this anymore. We could sell it outright.
Can you talk to the realtor about this?
I only talked to one, Brandon Tucker.
And he's saying that he couldn't provide any,
Well, he provided the initial thought that this is a very good layout. This might be better, but you can't really equate to, will it generate more revenue to a potential unknown buyer, because it may make this much more usable if the pond was over here.
Per our discussion yesterday, and another option that we could do that we wouldn't be obligated to $200,000 to $300,000 a pond location, move the property line over and go straight up from, I don't have my pointer.
But I think we're talking about if we just made a line.
Cut the pond right in half, build a berm in the pond for now, and then see if we need any more capacity down the road. That way it would free up that whole part for development.
So what the suggestion was, if we draw a line from somewhere in here up here,
Right.
we would have to build a berm here and not build this pond unless, and of course, we needed it because of storage element. And try that. Just go ahead and do it. So it would minimize some of the construction costs, because we would only have the construction cost of building a berm here. We would not have the construction cost of a berm all the way up and around here.
so we don't have any restrictions on how large that pond has to be, correct? As far as like
The
detention?
permitting, the DEP permitting, that's what I
That's
was.
what I wanna know.
I can tell you, and I'll have to go back and research that.
Cause that's gonna have an impact whether we have to do something now or later.
Okay, I will go back and research that, but I do not believe the size of that pond was a part of the water treatment plant that we did back in about 2007. It was just identified that the water was going to be pumped away for disposal.
Right.
And we showed them this pond, but I do not believe that pond was a part of that permit. So the size would just go back to whatever engineering design says it needs to be. What I can share with you is right over here in the pond is an overflow pipe that goes into the Signalement ditch. So that's the emergency. All above ground ponds have to, sound engineering design says that there should be an emergency discharge on it somehow.
What's been the operational history? I mean,
That's gonna be the answer.
have we overflowed?
Well, I don't know about overflowed, and there's no recording instrument on that pipe, it just flows. The only thing that we have had to do in the past was there was some debris that had been pumped from the treatment plant, like, material from the backwashing.
Lime slurry and that kind of
No,
stuff?
not lime, but it was like, alum and charcoal and things like that utilized in the treatment process early on that made it into the pond. So at one point, we had to dry the pond out, scrape up the material and get it out of there. But we've only done that once in 15 years, 16 years.
Well, I think we need to find that out first, and then we'll have a better idea of the design of what we're gonna do.
Well, we've got the material ready, acceptable to build a berm there where the potential pond could go. We could dig it out of there and move it on over.
I don't know if
You
that's
like
possible.
buying dirt?
I don't know if that's possible. Before I would agree to that, we'd have to do some soil profiles out there to see what's buried, like, is it good usable soil?
But we may not even have to dig if we can just find out what the requirements of the.
You're gonna have to put a berm here.
Right.
So we're gonna have to do that, and from, again, we would have to work that out. I don't think the pond size is that big of an issue. We can look at it, because there is the discharge into to the canal.
Right.
So what I can tell you is, early on, when I made more trips out there, I never saw it discharge. It was so big that it either evaporated or it percolated in the ground. I'm not saying it never has.
Right.
I'm just saying I haven't seen that. So, I was asked just to kind of bring back ideas. These are the ideas that we're running at, and certainly, so there would end up being this front parcel for sale, this second parcel for sale, which gives highway frontage on 78, and then the third parcel would be something of this side for sale that somebody could use as a RV park, subdivision, whatever.
So at last meeting, we had talked that we were about ready to go to market, to publicize that property, but now we have an easement issue we have to worry about, right, on the Farrell property?
Well, in the, you had two proposals in there from a survey group, and whether it's this easement or quitclaim deed of this easement and creation of this one, that's in their proposal.
No, I'm talking about the Farrell property, only the Farrell property. We had focused on that, we were gonna go ahead and list that and get it on the market before we even started talking about the back property. We were ready to move, but now that we've come up with this new easement, do we have to get that settled before we can list it?
I would suggest to you, yes, and only because of yes, if we're talking about moving the pipe from this area over to here, then that's going to impact the sale of the Farrell property, because we have to create an easement on the east property line. If we're gonna say, leave it alone, leave it where it is, well, then we just carve this piece out. When we carve this little parcel out, and it's done, we can still sell the Farrell.
So we still have some unknowns before we list. We need to get that decided before we list.
Yeah, so the surveyor knows what to do.
But you could still say, sell it, just tell us, okay. um, If we're saying we're leaving the pond in this alignment, whether we sell it the way it is like this, or whether we draw it like this, I'm good with that if you tell me one way or the other, and approve the surveying quotes, and we can bring it back next month, and then you can bless it, and we.
Just a thought, and this is just off the top of my head, I know we own the Flores property,
Yeah,
and would it be
that would be
advantageous
this
to?
property here.
Yeah, to come straight across with the, backwash pipe to the pond instead of going all the way out to
We
78?
thought about that, and I can only tell you that the, 3 parcels that we'd have to talk to, I don't know if they would be ready, willing, and able to bisect their property with a pipe. Because I don't know what they're gonna use the property for. As opposed to if we got an easement on the edge of it, which is within setback requirements, for land development, they can't use it anyway. That's usually easier to get an easement than to say, I need to go right through here.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Tom? Tom was saying something.
No, I'm looking at it to see where that would be. Would you be talking about the north end of those properties? I don't like the idea, and they wouldn't either, of it bisecting them.
Well, if we had to go north to go across, we're just defeating our purpose, because we're already going south to go across. But I was just thinking straight down the middle, it's gonna be 6 feet underground, nobody'd even know it was there.
But it's there. But it's there, and it
But it's
has an
there.
impact. So
Got
I
it.
would,
Okay, it was just a thought, I was looking at how the crow flies, and maybe it would,
Well,
solve some easement
we could get a
problems.
big gun that they use in irrigation and just
Just
shoot
shoot
the
it
water,
over, right?
an arc over there to land.
I'm okay with that.
what are we using that,
Sir,
what are we using that parcel for?
which one?
Flores,
One that adjoins the plant,
Flores
that one.
property.
We are currently using it, or we just finished using it for the storage of 27,000 feet of pipe.
And
For
then
the-
what? And then what?
Well, we have more pipe projects coming, and the intent, it's gonna be used for storage, for material for the foreseeable future, immediate foreseeable future. Long-term, don't know that answer. If you remember, just a little bit of a history, Mr. Flores had his house right
did.
here,
You did?
about 20 feet from our older ground storage tanks that had failing marks in them because they were cracking and breaking. And so the question was, if we bought his property whenever it came up for sale, we wouldn't have that liability of this house about 20 feet from 1.5 million gallons of storage.
There
So.
was initially some discussion that maybe the new storage would go over there too.
Before we built this tank, the option was look at it here or
Right.
there.
Right.
And the engineer said, we're gonna plop it down right here. So this is the new
Yep.
tank.
Yep.
The old tanks are now gone, as well as Mr. Flores's house.
Looks like the house and all the plants are gone.
Well, the house wasn't even as good a shape as what's next door.
It was his house.
It needed to go. You didn't buy it for the house. You didn't buy it.
We bought it that, again, that his house was there, somebody else may build something on it. It was just one of those deals, the price was right, the timing was right, we now own the property. If we ever need to expand, if we're ever able to expand the plant, we have room to
It's there.
expand it.
So what do you need anything from us on this agenda item, John?
Well, again, what I would like to know is if this initial layout was fine, then I get with the surveyor and I get the paperwork started. If you wanna go forward with just the Farrell property, then do you want us to consider moving the pipe here and we give all of this property away? If there was any kind of discussion. If it were me, I'm gonna tell you, this opening was left to supplement the sale of this property where we would give them an easement so that whatever development happened on this property, they could have State Road 78 or Farrell Road access.
Both.
All right. So if we realign, if we build this berm across here, giving all of this property, and we can retain ownership up here, I'm okay with that too. Either way, whether we put the piping here or put the piping here, we have to have an easement. So if we have to have an easement, I would suggest we leave it where it is, and we leave our access where it is. The question is, if we change this to be this way and we move forward, I'm okay with that too. And we can direct the survey attempt to adjust that. I mean, I'm fine with moving it here. We know that we may have to pull the berm in here. We hold ownership on this to see how the pond works. We could even get additional engineering done on flows, expected flows, percolation rates, evaporation to confirm that that's enough volume. If that's true, maybe we only come up here a couple hundred feet. I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but I think that's not a bad way to look at it.
Right now, we have an option. Ms. Trigney has some questions about the capacity and all that we can work on, but at least we can move forward with sale at this point, that we're gonna do that, and we have an option to take
That's
this.
a very big pond. It's almost 10 acres. I mean, it's huge. So there's a lot of storage in there.
Yes, right, I've seen it, it's a big one, big one. Well, the market's right now, we don't know how long it's gonna stay right. I think the sooner we can list it and test the waters out there, see if there's any interest, we should do it, that's my personal opinion. And, get the surveying done.
So we're looking for a motion to proceed with the surveying, and provide an easement for our pipes going to the pond.
Well, we either need direction. I mean, I don't necessarily know that you need a motion, and you can if you want to do the surveying, but at least agree conceptually with this idea and we can get them started.
Well, that seems like.
I'm
the thing
sitting here
do.
trying to
Go
think
ahead and proceed with.
Which comes
trying to
first, the
get
apple
Our property on the
or the
market.
tree?
And, if it's your recommendation to leave the piping where it's at, then,
Well, it's gonna be an easement either way.
right?
And so if we retain ownership for this and we grant an easement to this property, then we don't move the pipe, because it's our property.
Right.
And there's gonna have to be one somewhere. It's either on this end or it's where it's at now. So,
Really do as little construction as possible.
My mind's going crazy over here. How much of an easement would you need just in case on the Farrell House property?
15 feet wide?
On the east? East 50, why wouldn't you reserve it anyhow? Just in case.
Okay, I'm good.
That keeps your options open. I mean, you could go on and, I think you could go on and deal with the Farrell House piece. If you get the alignment like you want it, reserve the easement that you're talking about on the east side of it, and sell that piece.
Well, we'd have to carve this off. That's on the Farrell property.
Still have to do that.
Well, you were trying to make it, or however you were gonna do it. Yeah, there you go, all right.
If you look, oops, sorry.
I'm sorry,
I don't
y'all
know
tell me
if
to
it
hush.
shows up too well in this, but there is, well, actually, I guess it's actually on the other parcel.
It looks like it.
It might be on the other parcel. I have to confirm that. See this very shaded area right here? I think that's where the pipe comes in. So it might be on the 66 acres. I'm gonna tell you when you drive out there where the fence line is, the fence, it appears that it's on the Farrell, but looking at this, I'll check and see, but it may be on the 66 acre parcel.
Yeah, we need to find that
But
out.
I'll get that confirmed. It may be an easement on the west side. I don't know. I'll get that confirmed.
there wouldn't be an easement there if we own the property?
We're planning on selling this property.
I got that. I'm just saying, you're doing a realignment on the Farrell House property.
Yes, sir.
You're taking off the north piece, right?
Yes, sir.
Fine. Then we need, just in case, get the legal description from the surveyor,
The 15-foot on the
but
east side.
still reserve an easement.
I'm okay with that. I just need to confirm that this piping is on the 66-acre parcel and not the Farrell parcel. If it crosses the Farrell parcel in any way, shape, or form, I will need an easement there for it.
So if you're cutting that piece off on the north side, what if you, if it takes across right here where the drinker,
Realign it.
just change this alignment to come here and then put need an
Run that by me again?
If you're gonna sell this piece,
Yes?
and the pipe is right here in the corner, why don't you just put this over here? You still need an easement for people that bought this, but you wouldn't need nothing off the barrel. So we're selling this piece.
But then we would own that wedge.
Where, well, we would own that easement where that piping is.
I agree, we need to own it, I agree. We're all dealing with a lot of suppositions here, but I think, Jamie, you and I are on the same wavelength. If that crosses the piece of property we wanna sell, then that ought to be cut out.
And all I said is we would then own it.
We own it now, but we would retain the ownership of it.
Then it would sell in the 66 acres, and we'd have to put an easement at that point, correct, for access?
We just have
But
to have
not
an
in the
easement,
Farrell
period.
sales. So Farrell sale would be done and ready to
Easement,
go.
period.
We're going, I'm saying reserve 50 feet on the east side of that Farrell piece, just in case of what.
Everybody agrees.
I understand. I think you're right. 15 feet and carve the other piece out.
I think we're good, we're on the same page.
Okay.
We got,
So what are we directing?
You know what to do?
Directing John to do?
Easement on the
well,
east
the
end?
only correction I want is everybody okay with carving that pond in the west end of it all?
Yeah, if that's acceptable to DEP, then,
Okay.
Then,
That's right.
Yes.
and you think it would function, then
Survey
let's
busy.
try it.
Get it busy.
Okay. Well, so we're good with that then? I'll get PSM, we'll get a purchase order done up and get all that started and hopefully bring it back to you next. You know, with all that, Tom?
I guess.
If anything comes up between now and then,
You guys
legally, you guys
discuss it.
can
Yeah.
work it out.
Okay.
That way we have time to sit down and think and take catch your breath. All right, now, public comment. Jamie, you're not public, you're staff. 27, any items from you, Tom?
Yes,
All right.
nothing legal wise. Something came up about my contract. I can't find it. John can't find it. It was done 100 years ago, and we've been going, I know you haven't seen it either.
I know.
I would like to get a contract signed with the OUA. The same $2,500 retainer plus the hourly rate on top of that. It's similar to what we do with Thorn Run. We pay the Thorn Run people $3,500 a month.
Have you drawn up a contract, sir, for us to?
I have, John's got it. Whatever you ask me to do, plus the other things that I do, I've outlined it.
The biggest difference, well, if you wanna go over it, what we do now versus what you're proposing.
What we do now, the $2,500 will buy so many hours a month, and then that starts. So the minimum I've paid each month is $2,500. It can go higher, Now I'm asking, make it like every other retainer contract is $2,500 retainer plus the hourly rate at the
So
225.
the only difference,
I'm not changing.
flat amount every month, 2,500, but it doesn't apply towards any hours or expenses. His hours and expenses are separate from the 2,500.
Right.
Put it
You're
in.
complying with minimum wage of $15 an hour, right, sir? Okay.
Well, it's like our billings. Our billings have a base facility charge
Correct.
and a volumetric charge, right? Base facility charge.
I make a motion that we accept the contract as presented by our attorney.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second. Ms. Trent, any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So one other thing that was in that contract and will be in this one is it will be for a term, 1 year, with an automatic renewal and/or a 60-day cancellation policy, I think is what it
And
is.
a right for calls. You can cancel it for calls.
So that, we'll bring that up and then we'll get the appropriate folks to sign it. We'll call it good.
Thank you. That's it.
You're the last person I have to worry about sneaking something in. Anything else, sir?
No, no, sir.
John, how about a report?
I'll be happy to talk about any of these items that are in here as far as the wastewater project, Southwest wastewater. It is moving very, very smoothly. Many hundreds of feet for the Forest Main project are in the ground. The drill under 98 has, I think, been completed. The jack and bores, there's two of them, the railroad and State Road 70 have yet to be done. There's a little bit of a ongoing discussion with the Water Management District to access their property south of 70, but I understand that that's being worked through. But the project so far has been going very good. The pump station, my understanding, they're gonna be on site at the beginning of July now as opposed to June. But they're under contract, so time is clicking away and they need to be done. Pine Ridge Park, okay, you got that, it was done, completed. Pine Ridge Utility Department, utility improvement, they have, the last month, you all approved the, notice of award to be issued to Glen Group. It was over budget, but it was approved with the understanding that they would be doing a change order to delete some of the elements in there. So the award was given, which required them to get us signed agreements, public construction bond, performance bond, insurance. They have done that. It came in either Thursday or Monday, so we were already authorized to issue the notice to proceed to get them started. So we'll get that signed by the board chairman and we'll get it out so that their time clock will be started for Pine Ridge Park. I will share with you, we don't have the change order, we've got a draft of it, but they'll, my understanding through the engineer, talking to the contractor, that they're going to sign that change order. I would suggest to you that there was an element that was discussed about reducing fees, and that was the elimination of some vacuum sewer service on the eastern side of the project. That area is already currently served by gravity sewer in the backyard, and as I suggested, the gravity sewer in the backyard is failing. It's old, hard to get to. I would suggest that when we bring the change order back, I would make a recommendation to the board that we keep that element in, just so we can get rid of that old failing gravity sewer. And to pay for that, there is a line item in the budget of contingency money, and we would probably, I would suggest to you that we would utilize that contingency money to make that payment. So the overall impact of the project is, the project will go up by a little bit, but it will be used by the contingency money. And we will, before we make So we'll bring that back, but just to let you know that they did supply the documents. We'll issue the notice to proceed, and we'll get that project signed, sealed, and out the door. So the other thing that's not in your board package, because again, these things always happen, yesterday, June 15th, Connie Benash reached out to me and talked about an issue that has happened in Tallahassee, that they've opened up two funding sources. One is open to smaller counties, line item requests for open-ended for projects. It's not necessarily tied to water or wastewater. The other one that's open is a portal through DEP for wastewater grants. I don't know that we can wait till July to get an answer, but I would like to see from the board what projects they would want us to pursue. As an example, in the local legislative delegation, might be this building. We had talked about refurbishing it, historic value. We never have gotten funding for it through the historic preservation grants. Maybe there's an issue where we need to put in a request for money for the historic renovation of this building. There could be, again, line item, because it's open-ended, maybe it's to help supplement the AMI project. It's a water project. So there's things there that we can pursue. On the FDEP grant portal, what I would suggest is that there's at least 3 projects that come to mind. Southwest Fifth Avenue, which is unfunded for construction. We're doing the design right now. Pine Ridge Park, where we know we're having an issue with the funding, meeting the COVID extra expense. And we talked about Treasure Island still having a $5 million unmet need. Whether or not we want to chase that deal. We know we're at the Southwest Service area, where we have tentatively at least an $8 million unmet need for the Southwest Service area that we're chasing USDA loan grant money. We can always try to pursue that for additional grant funding to cut down on the loan grant request through USDA. But what I would ask from board members, either through telephone, email, send me some ideas that you would like to see us pursue, and we can pursue that. So what I'll do is I'll send out an email to each of you reiterating all of these projects and under which umbrella they might fall, and y'all can either say yes or no, or identify your other projects that you might want us to consider. Just to recap, we had the.
Sorry, emergency.
That's right, just to recap.
I like
We
that.
have this open-ended local grant fund that's available. So objects might be the building restoration, could be AMI, because that's a water project. On the other side, the FDEP wastewater portal will open up. So the projects would be the one we just talked about, Pine Ridge. It's out for construction, and we know COVID experience has bumped that up, so maybe a $250,000–$500,000 request there. We have Treasure Island, $5 million unmet. We have the Southwest Fifth Avenue. We're doing the design, but no construction money. And of course, Southwest Service area, we have a lot of it funded through grant money, but we're still going out for loan money with USDA. Do we request more grant money to cut down on the loan money? Those would be 4 projects. Any other projects that y'all might like to see, I'll send out an email. You can either agree to those projects, you can number them if you want to, 1 to whatever, 1 being most important, but then that gives me some direction how to work with Connie on submitting these requests. So whether you call me back or reply to the email, I just don't think we have time to wait until the July meeting to get this in. problem with that is they typically do not reimburse for projects that might already be done. If Orange Loop is saying, oh, we can't begin construction until October, well then, yes. But I'm fearing that we should be ready to go sometime by July, whether or not I haven't seen any timeline as to when they're making a decision on it.
Oh, yeah.
If they make the decision on July, then, which is not likely, then maybe okay, but if they don't make the decision until September, we're out of luck.
Is there any infill that could be done? I mean,
Well, Southwest Fifth Avenue is infill.
are there others? I mean,
We're waiting on construction and collection system in Southwest, but that's underfunded right now.
To answer your question, there might be a way to look at that. Let's say, for instance, there is, throughout the network, there are people who have failed to connect to existing systems. Do we want to try to use that as grant monies to pay for their septic tank abandonment and connections? We could set up let's say we set up a number that we allow $3,000, and we request 100 connections, $300,000 from the state that we could then dole out for that use. I mean, we could do something like that, first come, first served. Out of all the people that are either on the gravity sewer, vacuum sewer, whatever, first come, first served, we have $3,000 available for septic tank abandonment and lateral connection. We might do a project like that. I can tell you, Pine Ridge Park, we're gonna ask for money, but one of the things that we talked about taking out was the sewer and water connection to pay the homeowners. And that was, I don't know, $400,000. But, that might be a part of the process. But for Hayfield, I think that would be a pretty good deal, that we're not doing infrastructure, but we're actually taking septic tanks offline. Might be a project.
Yeah.
Your clock's ticking, John.
Well, that's essentially what we got. The email, I'll send one out, hopefully today. You guys can think about it and then just respond that you like the list or add to the list. And, we can start putting something together with Connie.
Anything else for John? Thank you, John. I got one thing under items from the board. John and I talked yesterday about how wordy and how lengthy our board packages are getting. And a lot of the things in the consent agenda are redundant. We've approved the project, we've approved that. We don't have to look at this, have the expendings, we don't have to micromanage these spendings. Thorne run our lobbyist, they're on contract with us. Really, we don't need to know about any of these things unless we've got cost overruns or there's gonna be approval. So we could really trim a lot of the clerical part of these board packages down on staff, where they don't need to be unless we need to know about it. And I want the board's opinion on that. If you have a problem with trimming it down, I think it would be a great idea, as I know staff's working their butts off trying to get this thing out, tails off.
I'm good with trimming it down as long as Tom doesn't see any issue from a,
But if you do, put it on,
Yeah.
we definitely want to be up the door.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that we've already approved, and we don't need to.
So if that helps, one of the things that we just added recently after conversations like that, in the purchasing manual, we would like to try to address that issue by saying, there's lots of big items that we spend money on that y'all never see.
Correct.
FP&L, chemicals, there's just hundreds of thousands of dollars that we pay out. So to go along with what we talked about, to see a $3,500 Thorn Run or a $250 McVicker, or even on our big projects that you approved overall for, let's say, 1.8 million, do you want to continue to see those progress payments coming back for review every month for 30,000, 50,000? I don't know where you want to draw the limit. So my question to the finance staff that I posed to them was that, how do do we determine which we show to the board versus what we don't? So we would like to put an element in this purchasing manual that ties that in as to what you want to see. I can tell you under previous administration, when the board approved the budget, let's say the budget included a vehicle, $50,000. Well, in previous times, that was never brought to the board because it was approved under the budget. It was just purchased according to our guidelines. 3 quotes, 8 quotes. We just met those requirements when we bought a vehicle. I kind of do it a little different. I still bring it back for board review and approval. But those are the kind of elements that we're trying to address in this purchasing manual. And if you all are agreeing, we'll continue down that path, put it in the manual, and it would be open for review and discussion.
I think that's a good idea.
Well,
And as
I'm
long as
just-
we're okay with the audit portion of anything, whenever it's audited.
I'm just looking at the consent agenda for today. And the only two that really, I think, fit under the category you're talking about are the last two, McVicker and Thorn Run. The rest of them, I like to see board approval on those progress payments. From an auditor standpoint, I think it's important that you do those.
We would certainly pose that question to the auditor
Yes.
before. They'd have to review the manual to approve it also.
So you're saying like reoccurring costs, like the last two could be,
Oh, the last two, they're under contract, McVicker and Thorn Run, and that's a constant payment unless there's something unusual. The rest of them, I think, would require, yes, you need to see the monthly invoice. I'm sorry, you need to see the monthly, financial reports. The rest of these are invoices on ongoing projects. You need to know where you are on those projects. I think they need to stay in there, John. I mean,
They can be handled one of two ways. Either they stay in there, or there is a staff report on all the projects as to where we are. I guess I'm just trying to, this document is for y'all to know what I'm
Yeah, we
doing
just need
out
to
there.
simplify it. As long as it's within the auditor rules, and then you're providing monthly progress reports, I would think that would,
We'll get that answered.
Yeah.
You could easily say that Tom is,
Yeah.
that the auditor agrees with Tom, and it'll stay the way it is. I'm just saying that this is y'all's document to know what I'm doing out there.
see what the auditor says. I'll acquiesce to what the auditor says.
My mindset was, we've approved, for example, engineering on a project for $1.2 million. He's got that $1.2 million. We don't have to approve that every week, because we've already approved the spending.
You're approving the payments. You're approving the payments on that.
Okay, well, if you think it's necessary, I'm good with whatever your recommendation is.
we just need to
Just
get
didn't look
feedback
at
from
it
the
that way.
auditor too.
Other than that, I just think it a way to trim down some work for staff, but we could do that with a few. We'll get that. Any other things? Being done, thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys.
A lot of
Thank
fun.
you.
Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to see you, my
You
dear.
too, my dear.